"Mister, I can wake your daughter." The words cut through the Wyoming rain like a blade through silk. Cornelius Blackwood stopped mid-stride on his mansion's wraparound porch. His boots scraped against wet wood. The girl stood at his gate, small, dark-skinned, soaked through to bone. Her dress hung in tatters that might have been blue once. Now they were the color of mud and desperation. Blackwood's hand tightened on the porch rail. 3 months. 3 months of watching Isabella waste. Away in that upstairs bedroom. 3 months of doctors with their leather bags and empty promises. The latest one had just left. Hopeless, the man had said. Nothing more to be done. "You hear me, mister?" The girl's voice carried over the drumming rain. Dutch Morrison Blackwood's foreman stepped from the barn. His hand rested on his gun belt. 2 ranch hands flanked him. "Move along, girl." Dutch's voice was granite. "This ain't the place for your kind." Blackwood studied the girl through the storm. She couldn't be more than 14, maybe younger. Her hair was braided tight against her skull. Her eyes held something he'd seen in mirrors lately. Desperation wearing the mask of determination. "What did you say about my daughter?" The girl took a step forward. Dutch tensed. "I said I can wake her. Been sleeping too long, hasn't she? Doctors can't help her, but I can." Blackwood's chest tightened. Word traveled fast in small towns. Everyone knew about Isabella's condition. The mysterious sleep that had claimed her after she'd touched that black stone they'd pulled from the mine. The stone that now sat on her nightstand like a piece of captured midnight. "How would you know anything about my daughter?" "Because I got the sight. My grandmother had it. Her grandmother before her. They healed folks on the Underground Railroad. Saved lives when nobody else could." Dutch spat into the mud. "Boss, don't listen to this nonsense. She's probably just looking for a handout. Maybe planning to rob us blind." But Blackwood was already walking down the porch steps. Rain soaked through his shirt within seconds. The girl didn't move as he approached. Didn't flinch when he towered over her. "You're telling me you can heal what 3 doctors from Denver couldn't?" "I'm telling you your daughter ain't sick. She's trapped." The words hit him like a physical blow. Blackwood stared into the girl's face. No fear there. No deception. Just quiet certainty. "Trapped how?" "In the in-between place. Somewhere the doctors can't reach, but I can." Thunder rolled across the ranch. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the girl's face in stark relief. Blackwood saw something there that made his breath catch. The same fierce love he'd seen in Isabella's eyes when she'd talk about her dreams of becoming a teacher. "Boss," Dutch's voice carried a warning, "you can't be considering this." Blackwood was considering it. God help him, he was considering it. 3 months of watching his only child fade away. 3 months of empty prayers and useless medicine. His wife had died bringing Isabella into this world. The girl was all he had left. "What's your name?" "Serena Moon." "And you're alone out here?" "Yes, sir." "Where's your family?" Something flickered across Serena's face. Pain, maybe. Or memory sharp enough to cut. "Gone." Dutch stepped closer. "Boss, this is madness. You bring her into the house, the whole town will be talking. And if something happens to Miss Isabella while she's here..." "Something's already happening to Isabella." Blackwood's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. "She's dying." The rain fell harder. Serena stood perfectly still, water streaming down her face. Waiting. Blackwood thought of Isabella's pale face against white pillows. Thought of her breathing, so shallow it barely moved the sheets. Thought of the way she'd looked at that black stone before she'd touched it. Curious, fearless. She'd gotten that fearlessness from him. Now maybe it was time for him to use his. "You really believe you can wake her?" "I know I can, but it won't be easy. And it won't be safe. For her or for me." "Why not safe?" Serena's eyes met his. Rain dripped from her lashes. "Because what's Got hold of your daughter, doesn't want to let go. And because folks around here don't much like my kind trying to help white folks, they'll think I'm doing something evil. Dutch stepped forward. She's right about that, boss. You bring her in there. Start letting her do whatever hoodoo she's planning, and we'll have half the territory calling for her head. And if I don't? Serena's voice was barely audible over the rain. Then you'll be burying your daughter before the week's out. The words hit Blackwood like a physical blow. He staggered back a step. Dutch reached for his arm, but Blackwood waved him off. You're certain about that? As certain as I am about anything in this world. Blackwood closed his eyes. Saw Isabella's face the last time she'd been awake. She'd been reading by the window, sunlight in her blonde hair. She'd looked up at him and smiled, that same smile her mother had worn. When he opened his eyes, Serena was still standing there, still waiting. If I let you try, and you fail ... then I'll face whatever comes, but I won't fail. I can't. Something in her voice made him believe her. Made him take that final step off the cliff of respectability and social standing. Dutch opened the gate. Boss, I can't recommend this. You're not recommending it. I'm ordering it. Dutch's jaw worked. His hand stayed on his gun. But he walked to the gate and pulled it open. Serena stepped through. Her bare feet made no sound on the muddy ground. She looked smaller now inside the fence, younger, more fragile. But her eyes still held that unshakable certainty. Thank you, she said. Blackwood nodded toward the house. Let's see if you can back up those words. The mansion's interior swallowed sound. Blackwood's boots echoed against polished hardwood. As he led Serena through halls lined with oil paintings and crystal fixtures, wealth accumulated over decades. None of it worth a breath from his daughter's lungs. Dutch followed 3 paces behind. His spurs clicked disapproval with each step. The staff, Serena's voice was barely audible, sent them away when Isabella took ill, couldn't stand their whispering. They climbed the curved staircase. Rain drummed against tall windows. The sound followed them like judgment. Isabella's room lay at the end of the hallway. Blackwood's hand trembled on the doorknob. 3 months of entering this space. 3 months of hoping to find her awake. 3 months of crushing disappointment. The door opened on stillness. Isabella lay motionless in the 4-poster bed. 17 years old and pale as carved ivory. Her golden hair spread across white pillows. Her chest rose and fell in shallow rhythm. The only sound was the whisper of her breathing and the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. Serena stepped past Blackwood. Her bare feet made no sound against the carpet. She approached the bed with careful reverence. Then she saw the knitstand. Serena's entire body went rigid. Her hand flew to her throat. The color drained from her face until she was nearly as pale as the girl in the bed. Where did you find that? Blackwood followed her gaze to the black stone. Obsidian, smooth and darker than midnight. The size of a man's fist, it seemed to absorb light from the room. The new shaft. 50 feet down. Isabella saw it when she came to visit the mine. Said it was beautiful. Beautiful. Serena's voice cracked. Lord have mercy. She backed away from the knitstand. Her hands shook. That's no ordinary stone. That's a spirit anchor. Sacred to the tribes who buried their dead in that ground. Blackwood's stomach turned to ice. What are you saying? I'm saying your daughter didn't just touch that stone. She woke something up. Something that's been sleeping in the earth for generations. Dutch stepped forward. Now hold on. You're talking about ghost stories. Serena spun to face him. Her eyes blazed with fury and fear. You think the dead don't have power? You think disturbing their resting place comes without consequence? She turned back to Isabella. Approached the bed again, but kept her distance from the knitstand. She's caught between worlds. The spirits are holding her soul hostage. They're using her to send a message. What message? That the desecration stops. That the sacred ground gets returned. That the dead get their peace back. Blackwood sank into the chair beside Isabella's bed. The same chair he'd occupied for countless hours, watching, waiting, praying to a God who seemed to have stopped listening. The mine produces half my wealth. The silver vein runs directly through that ground. Then you got a choice to make. Serena's voice was steady now, certain. Your daughter or your fortune. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dutch shifted beside the door. His loyalty warred with his disbelief. Even if what you're saying is true, how do we fix it? Serena knelt beside the bed. She held her hands above Isabella's forehead without touching. Her eyes closed. Her breathing deepened. Minutes passed. The clock ticked. Rain continued its assault on the windows. When Serena opened her eyes, tears traced down her cheeks. She's so far away. But she's fighting. She's strong, your daughter. Can you bring her back? Maybe, but it won't be simple. The spirits want more than just the stone returned. They want the whole burial ground restored. All mining stopped. All artifacts given back. Blackwood's hands clenched into fists. 30 years of building his empire. 30 years of blood and sweat and calculated risks. All of it dependent on that mine. There's more. Serena's voice was barely above a whisper. The ceremony to free her has to be performed at the burial ground itself, with her there. During the spirit hour when the veil is thinnest. When? Tomorrow night. During the new moon. If we wait longer, she'd be lost forever. Dutch stepped forward. Boss, this is insanity. You can't risk moving Isabella. And you sure can't trust this girl's word about spirit nonsense. But Blackwood was looking at his daughter's face, at the hollows beneath her eyes, at the way her skin seemed almost translucent in the lamplight. She's dying anyway. The admission tore from his throat. 3 months of denial crumbled in an instant. The doctors gave her days, maybe a week. So tell me, what exactly am I risking? Dutch had no answer. His face worked with unspoken arguments. Serena stood. She moved to the window and stared out at the storm. Lightning illuminated the distant mountains. Thunder rolled across the land. There's something else you need to know. If I do this, if I help her, there's no going back. The whole territory will know. They'll come for me. They'll say I'm practicing dark magic. They'll want me dead. Why would you risk that? Serena turned from the window. Her face was carved from shadow and determination. Because I know what it feels like to lose everything. To watch people you love slip away while you're powerless to stop it. And because she doesn't deserve to pay for what others did to sacred ground. Blackwood studied her face. Saw the truth written there in lines too deep for someone so young. You've lost family. Everyone I ever loved. Wagon train attacked 6 months ago. I was the only one who survived. The simple words carried weight beyond their meaning. Blackwood recognized the tone. He'd used it himself when talking about his wife's death. I'm sorry. Serena nodded. Turned back to the window. Sorry doesn't bring folks back. But maybe helping your daughter will balance the scales somehow. Blackwood looked at Isabella. At the black stone on the knitstand. At the storm raging beyond the glass. What do you need me to do? First, we move that stone away from her, far away. Then I start preparing the ceremony. And you decide if you love your daughter more than your gold. Dutch cleared his throat. Boss, the men won't understand. Moving Isabella. Shutting down the mine. Following this girl's instructions. Then they don't need to understand. They just need to follow orders. Blackwood stood, walked to the knitstand. Stared down at the obsidian stone that had stolen his daughter's soul. How do I move it safely? Wrap it in blessed cloth. Don't touch it with bare skin. And be ready for the spirits to fight back. Fight back how? Serena's reflection in the window looked haunted. They'll try to stop us. They'll send signs, maybe worse. Thunder crashed overhead. The house shook. The grandfather clock chimed midnight. They already know we're here. Dawn brought no peace. Word traveled through the territory with the speed of wildfire. The Blackwood Ranch harbored a stranger. A young woman of color claiming supernatural abilities. The whispers started before the sun cleared the mountains. Serena worked in Isabella's room while shadows still clung to the corners. She'd wrapped the obsidian stone in one of Isabella's white communion veils. The blessed cloth seemed to dim the stone's malevolent presence. She'd carried it to the barn, placed it in an iron box Dutch had found among the tools. Even wrapped and contained, the stone pulsed with dark energy. Isabella showed no immediate improvement, but her breathing had deepened slightly. Her skin held a touch more warmth. Small victories in a war against forces older than memory. Blackwood hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in his study, staring at mine reports and financial ledgers, numbers that represented decades of work. Wealth that could crumble if he chose his daughter over his empire. The choice felt inevitable. It also felt impossible. Dutch knocked on the study door. His face was grim in the morning light. "Boss, we got visitors coming." Reverend Pike's leading a group up from town. Maybe 15 people. They don't look friendly. Blackwood set down his coffee cup. The liquid had gone cold hours ago. "How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour. They're writing slow, deliberate." "Where's?" "Serena, still with Miss Isabella. Been there all night. Haven't heard her speak a word since you went to bed." Blackwood rose from his chair. His joints protested the night of sleepless tension. He walked to the window and stared across his land, rolling hills dotted with cattle. Fence lines that marked territory carved from wilderness through will and determination. All of it meaningless if Isabella died. Send the boys to the south pasture. I don't want them caught up in whatever's coming. "Boss, maybe you should reconsider. Send the girl away before Pike gets here. Tell him she was just passing through." Blackwood turned from the window. Dutch's face showed genuine concern. 30 years of loyalty earned him the right to speak his mind. "Would you abandon someone?" "Who might save your child?" Dutch's jaw worked. His hands opened and closed. "No, sir, I suppose I wouldn't." "Then we stand firm." They found Serena kneeling beside Isabella's bed. Her hands moved in patterns above the girl's motionless form. Her lips moved in silent prayer or incantation. Her face held the concentration of a surgeon attempting impossible surgery. She looked up when they entered. Exhaustion shadowed her eyes. "How is she?" Blackwood's voice was barely audible. "Fighting. The spirits have her trapped, but she's not giving up. She's strong, your daughter. Stronger than they expected." Blackwood approached the bed. Isabella's face seemed less pale. Her breathing was definitely stronger. "Riders coming from town," Dutch said. "Reverend Pike stirring up trouble." Serena nodded. No surprise crossed her features. "Expected as much. How many?" 15, maybe more. They'll want to see me. Want a judge. What I'm doing here." Blackwood's hands clenched into fists. "No one judges anything on my land without my permission." "With respect, sir, your permission won't matter much to men who think I'm practicing evil." The sound of hoofbeats reached them through the windows. Multiple horses approaching at a steady pace. The deliberate rhythm of people with a purpose. Blackwood moved to the window. Dust clouds marked the rider's approach. Pike rode at the front, his black coat stark against the morning sky. Behind him, townspeople Blackwood recognized. The blacksmith, the mercantile owner. Men who'd done business with him for years. Now they came as judges. "I'll handle this," Blackwood said. Serena stood. Her slight frame seemed fragile next to the bed where Isabella lay. "They won't be satisfied with words. They'll want me gone. And if I leave now, your daughter dies. Then you don't leave." The Hoofbeats grew louder. Voices carried on the wind. Pike's resonant tones shaped words Blackwood couldn't quite make out. But the tone was clear enough. Condemnation wrapped in religious authority. Dutch checked his rifle. "Boss, some of those men are armed. So are we. You willing to shoot neighbors over this?" The question hung in the air. Blackwood stared down at Isabella's peaceful face. She looked younger in sleep, more vulnerable. The fever that had taken her mother hadn't been this quiet, this patient, this cruel. "I'm willing to protect what's mine." The riders reached the main gate. Pike's voice carried clearly now. Biblical verses about false prophets and unclean spirits. Words designed to win clamor rather than comfort. "They're not coming through that gate unless I invite them." Dutch nodded. He understood the code of the territory. A man's land was his kingdom. But kingdoms could fall when enough people decided to tear down the walls. Serena moved to Isabella's side. She placed her hand carefully on the girl's forehead. Her eyes closed in concentration. She's trying to wake up. The spirits are fighting to keep her, but she's fighting back. I can feel her pushing against their hold. How much longer? Until tonight. The ceremony has to happen during the new moon, when the barrier between worlds is thinnest. Blackwood calculated the hours. Sunrise to sunset. Then the delicate window when Serena claimed she could free his daughter's soul. If they could survive that long. Pike's voice rose above the morning wind. "Cornelius Blackwood, we need to speak with you about the stranger you're harboring." The words carried authority and threat in equal measure. Pike had been the territory's moral voice for 15 years. His sermons drew crowds from 3 counties. His opinions shaped minds and moved hearts. Now those opinions focused on the girl trying to save Isabella's life. Blackwood walked to the window. Pike sat his horse. With preacher's dignity. The men behind him showed varying degrees of determination and uncertainty. Some wanted justice. Others simply followed stronger wills. "I'll go down and talk to them." "Boss," Dutch's voice carried warning. "Pike's been preaching about spiritual corruption for weeks. Ever since word got out about the mind troubles. He's got people convinced that something evil is stirring in the territory. Something evil is stirring. It's called fear and ignorance." Serena looked up from Isabella's bedside. "Mr. Blackwood, these men won't be satisfied with explanations. They've already decided what I am, what I represent. What do you represent? Everything they've been taught to fear. Different skin, different beliefs, different ways of touching the divine." The truth of her words settled over the room. Blackwood had built his fortune in a territory where difference meant danger, where survival often depended on everyone looking the same, thinking the same, believing the same. Now his daughter's life depended on embracing something different. Pike's voice rose again. "We know she's in there, Blackwood. We know what she's doing to your daughter." Dutch moved toward the door. "I'll go with you, boss." "No, stay with them. If this goes badly, get Serena and Isabella out of here." "Where would we go?" Blackwood had no answer. The territory stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. But Pike's influence reached almost as far, and fear traveled faster than horses. Somewhere, anywhere. He left them in Isabella's room. Serena's hand still rested on his daughter's forehead. The girl's breathing remained steady. Strong enough to give hope, fragile enough to break his heart. The hallway felt longer than usual. Each step toward the front door carried him further from his daughter and closer to a confrontation that would determine everything. Pike waited with the patience of judgment itself. Blackwood stepped onto his porch. 15 mounted men faced him across the ranch yard. Pike sat his horse at the front, black coat buttoned tight against the morning chill. His face carried the stern certainty of a man who spoke for God. "Cornelius." Pike's voice carried formal distance. 20 years of friendship reduced to suspicion. We need to discuss the situation you've created. What situation would that be, Reverend? The girl you're harboring. The unnatural activities taking place under your roof. Blackwood's hands rested easy at his sides, but his shoulders carried tension rigid as fence wire. A young woman is helping tend to my daughter. Nothing unnatural about that. Helping. How, exactly? The question hung between them. Pike's eyes held the cold fire of righteous judgment. The men behind him shifted in their saddles. Uncertainty warred with conviction on their faces. Medical care. What kind of medical care involves? Burning strange herbs and chanting in foreign tongues? Blackwood's jaw tightened. Someone had been watching, listening, reporting back to Pike with twisted versions of what they'd witnessed. Who told you that? Pike ignored the question. Cornelius, Isabella has been ill for 3 months. Every doctor in the territory has seen her. Now suddenly you bring in this girl, and she claims she can accomplish what trained physicians cannot. She claims she can help. I'm allowing her to try. Help how? With what powers? What authority? The words carried weight beyond their surface. Meaning, Pike wasn't just questioning Serena's methods. He was questioning the natural order, the established hierarchy, the comfortable certainties that kept the territory functioning according to familiar rules. Behind Pike, the blacksmith leaned forward in his saddle. Cornelius, folks are worried. Strange things have been happening since that girl arrived. Cattle spooked for no reason, wells running dry. Storm patterns that don't make sense. Coincidence. Maybe, or maybe something darker is at work. Pike raised his hand. The gesture commanded silence and attention. Cornelius, I've known you for 20 years. You're a reasonable man. A Christian man. Surely you can see the danger in what you're doing. The only danger I see is to my daughter's life. And what about the danger to her soul? The question cut deep. Blackwood felt the weight of Pike's conviction. The certainty of a man who saw the world in absolutes, good and evil, sacred and profane. US and them. Serena Moon is trying to save Isabella. That makes her the answer to my prayers, not a threat to anyone's soul. Pike's horse stepped forward. The animal sensed its rider's tension. You use her name. You speak of her as if she were family. She's under my protection. Protection. From what? Blackwood's eyes swept the mounted men. Saw fear and determination in equal measure. From people who would judge her without knowing her. We know enough. Strange practices. Unnatural claims. Disruption of the natural order that God established. The morning sun climbed higher. Heat began to build despite the early hour. Sweat gathered between Blackwood's shoulder blades, not from temperature. From the weight of defending something he didn't fully understand against men whose certainty was absolute. God's natural order includes healing the sick. Through proper channels. Through established authority. Not through the dark arts of people who worship foreign spirits. She's not worshiping anything except the desire to help a dying girl. Pike's voice hardened. Then let her submit to examination. Let her explain her methods to qualified spiritual authority. Let her prove her intentions are pure. Whose authority? Yours? If necessary. The implicit threat settled over the ranch yard. Pike's spiritual authority carried weight throughout the territory. His word could turn neighbors into enemies, friends into judges. Blackwood understood the stakes. Submit to Pike's examination or face isolation. Conform or be cast out. And if she refuses, then she leaves, today, and you return to proper treatment for Isabella. Proper treatment has failed. Then perhaps it's God's will. The words hit Blackwood with physical force. He staggered back a step. Pike's cold certainty about divine will, about accepting Isabella's death as somehow part of a greater plan. God's will is for fathers to fight for their children, within proper bounds. There are no bounds. When it comes to saving my daughter, Pike's eyes narrowed. Behind him, the mounted men exchanged glances. Some showed sympathy for Blackwood's desperation. Others hardened their faces against emotional appeals. Cornelius, you're allowing grief to cloud your judgment. This girl has filled your head with false hopes, impossible promises. She's taking advantage of your pain. She's giving me the only hope I've had in 3 months. False hope is worse than no hope at all. A window opened in the house above. Serena appeared at Isabella's bedroom window. She looked down at the confrontation in the yard. Her face showed no fear, no surprise, only quiet determination. Pike followed Blackwood's gaze, saw Serena's face in the window. His expression hardened further. There she is. The source of all this trouble. The source of my daughter's only chance. Pike turned his attention back to Blackwood. I'm going to ask you one more time. Send her away. Return to proper treatment for Isabella. Let God's will be done. And if I refuse, then you force us to take stronger measures. The threat was clear. Pike's influence extended beyond spiritual matters. He could turn the entire territory against the Blackwood Ranch. Make it impossible to conduct business. Isolate them completely. Blackwood looked up at Serena's face in the window. She gave him the slightest nod, not encouragement, just acknowledgement. She understood the choice he faced. Reverend, I appreciate your concern, but my daughter's care is not subject to committee approval. Pike's jaw tightened. Even if that care involves dangerous practices, unnatural influences, potential harm to Isabella's eternal soul, especially then. The standoff stretched between them. Pike's certainty against Blackwood's desperation. Established authority against paternal love. The comfortable order of things against the chaos of hope. Finally, Pike gathered his reins. Very well. But understand this, Cornelius. What happens next is on your head. The consequences of your choices will follow you. I'll live with thee. Consequences of fighting for my daughter. Can you live with the consequences of condemning her to death? Pike had no answer. He turned his horse and rode away. The other men followed in various states of reluctance and determination. Blackwood watched them go. Dust clouds marked their retreat, but he knew they'd be back. Pike's kind of certainty never surrendered, it only regrouped. He looked up at the window. Serena was gone, returned to Isabella's bedside. Returned to the impossible task of stealing a soul back from spirits older than memory. The sun climbed higher. Heat built across the ranch. And somewhere in the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Time was running out. The new moon rose invisible against the star-scattered sky. Darkness claimed the territory with absolute authority. No torches, no lanterns. Only the pale light of distant stars to guide them through the night that would determine everything. Blackwood carried Isabella wrapped in quilts. Her breathing remained steady but shallow. 3 days of Serena's care had strengthened her slightly, but she still felt weightless in his arms, fragile as spun glass. Dutch led the way toward the burial ground. His rifle rested ready across his saddle. Behind them, Serena walked with quiet purpose. She carried a leather satchel filled with herbs, stones, and tools whose names Blackwood didn't know. Items that might bridge the gap between worlds. The mine entrance loomed ahead. Wooden supports framed the mouth of the shaft that had started. Everything. Blackwood's fortune and his daughter's curse born from the same hole in the earth. Here, Serena's voice was barely audible. The ceremony ground is just beyond the mine. They passed the entrance to the shaft. Blackwood felt the weight of decisions made in ignorance. He'd ordered the digging without knowing what lay beneath. Had pursued wealth without considering the cost in more than dollars and labor. The burial ground stretched before them. Sacred. Earth scarred by mining equipment. Ancient graves disturbed by modern greed. The very air seemed to pulse with accumulated anger. Serena knelt and placed her hand on the ground. Her eyes closed in concentration. They're here, waiting, they know. What we've come to do. Dutch scanned the darkness. His horse shifted nervously beneath him. Boss, something's not right. The animals are spooked. Even as he spoke, the night sounds ceased. No owl calls. No insect chorus. No rustle of small creatures in the grass. The world held its breath. Put her here. Serena indicated a smooth patch of earth, where the disturbance is strongest. Blackwood knelt and placed Isabella on the ground. Even unconscious, she seemed to respond to the location. Her breathing quickened. Her eyelids fluttered. She feels them, Serena whispered. The spirits are calling to her. Calling how? They want her to join them. To cross over completely. It would be easier than fighting to bring her back. Blackwood's hands tightened on Isabella's shoulders. She's not crossing over. Serena began removing items from her satchel. Herbs that released sharp scents when crushed. Stones that seemed to hold inner light. A small drum made from animal hide stretched over carved wood. The ceremony will take time. Once I start, I can't stop, no matter what happens. What might happen? Before Serena could answer, Dutch called out from his position at the burial ground's edge. Riders coming, moving fast. Torches appeared in the distance. Multiple riders approaching through the darkness. Pike had decided not to wait for morning. How many? Hard to tell. Maybe 20, maybe more. Blackwood stood, drew his revolver. Checked the chambers by feel. Can you still do this with them here? Serena's hands moved with practiced certainty, arranging herbs and patterns around. Isabella's still form. I have to. Dawn's coming. If we wait, we lose her forever. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder. Voices carried on the night wind. Pike's resonant tones organizing his followers, preparing them for confrontation. They'll try to stop us, Dutch said. Then we stop them first. Serena looked up from her. Preparations. Mr. Blackwood, violence on sacred ground will poison the ceremony. The spirits will turn away from us. Then what do you suggest? Trust, faith, and the hope that love is stronger than fear. The riders crested the hill overlooking the burial ground. Torches cast dancing shadows across the disturbed earth. Pike rode at the front, his black coat stark against the firelight. Behind him, more men than Blackwood had expected. The entire congregation, it seemed, united in their certainty. Cornelius, Pike's voice carried across the distance. Step away from the girl, both of them. Blackwood remained kneeling beside Isabella. Go back to town, Reverend. This doesn't concern you. Corruption of sacred ground concerns every God-fearing person in this territory. The irony wasn't lost on Blackwood. Pike spoke of sacred ground while Isabella lay dying because that same ground had been desecrated by mining equipment. Serena began to sing, low, wordless, a melody that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The sound carried power that made the horses shy. She's starting, Pike shouted. Stop her before she completes whatever unholy ritual she's planning. Several men dismounted, moved forward with the slow determination of people convinced they were doing God's work. Their torches turned the night into a canvas of shifting light and shadow. Dutch positioned himself between the approaching men and the ceremony ground. His rifle tracked their movement. That's far enough. Stand aside, Dutch. This is bigger than your loyalty to Blackwood. My loyalty is to doing what's right. And what's right is letting this girl try to save Isabella. Serena's song grew stronger. Her hands moved in patterns above Isabella's motionless form. The herbs she'd arranged began to smolder without flame. Sweet smoke rose into the starlit sky. Isabella's breathing deepened. Her eyelids fluttered more rapidly. Something was happening. Something that made the air itself seem to thicken. Pike dismounted. walked forward with the measured pace of absolute authority. In the name of all that's holy, I order you to stop this blasphemy. In the name of all that's holy, Blackwood replied, I'm trying to save my daughter's life. Through dark arts, through communion with unclean spirits, through the only hope she has left. Pike's face was carved from righteous fury. Cornelius, you're condemning your own soul. And hers. Serena's song reached a crescendo. Her hands pressed against Isabella's forehead. The smoking herbs flared brighter. The very air seemed to shimmer. Isabella's eyes opened. For a moment, she stared directly at Serena. Recognition flickered across her face. Then her gaze turned to her father. Her lips moved in soundless words. Papa, the single word carried. More power than Pike's entire sermon. More authority than his 20 followers. More truth than all their certainty combined. But even as Isabella spoke, Serena collapsed. The effort of calling her back had drained something vital from the girl who'd made it possible. She lay motionless beside Isabella, her breathing barely detectable. No, Blackwood reached for Serena. You said it was possible. You said you could bring her back. Isabella struggled to sit up. Her voice was weak but clear. She did bring me back. But she gave too much of herself to do it. Pike stepped forward. His face showed confusion and dawning fear. This is impossible. The girl was dying. We all saw it. She was dying, Isabella agreed. But Serena showed me the way home. She placed her hand on Serena's forehead. The same gesture Serena had used on her. Now it's my turn. Light seemed to flow from Isabella's hand into Serena's. Still form, not visible light, something deeper. Something that made the watchers step back in awe. Serena's eyes opened. Life returned to her face. She sat up slowly, supported by Isabella's steady grip. How? Pike's voice was barely audible. Isabella looked at him with eyes that held knowledge beyond her years. She taught me. While I was lost between worlds, she taught me how to heal, how to give life instead of taking it. The two girls helped each other stand. Serena swayed but remained upright. Isabella was weak but clearly alive. Clearly present in a way she hadn't been for 3 months. Pike stared at them. His certainty crumbled in the face of something he couldn't explain or condemn. This is impossible. No, Blackwood said, pulling both girls into his arms. This is family. Dawn crept across the burial ground. The torches flickered and died in the growing light. Pike's followers stood in scattered confusion, their certainty shattered by what they'd witnessed. A miracle they couldn't deny. A truth that challenged everything they'd believed about the nature of good and evil. Sheriff Crawford pushed through. The crowd. He'd arrived during the ceremony, drawn by reports of gathering trouble. Now he faced something far beyond his authority to judge. Reverend Pike, I need to understand what happened here. Pike stared at Isabella and Serena. Both girls stood steady now, supporting each other with quiet strength. His face worked through emotions he couldn't name. I don't know what happened here. The girl was dying, Crawford said. Everyone in the territory knew it. Now she's standing here talking. That's not something a man can ignore. It's not something a man can explain either. Blackwood helped Isabella walk to the sheriff. Her legs were unsteady after 3 months of unconsciousness, but her eyes held clear intelligence. Life had returned in full measure. Sheriff Crawford, I want to make something clear. Serena Moon saved my daughter's life. Anyone who has a problem with that has a problem with me. Crawford studied Serena's face, saw exhaustion and determination in equal measure. Miss, these are serious accusations. Folks are saying you practice unnatural arts. I practice healing. Same as any doctor. Not the same, Pike interjected. Doctors use medicine, science, proven methods. Isabella spoke quietly. What's more proven than results? The simple question hung in the air. Pike had no answer. His followers shifted uncomfortably. Some still held torches that seemed foolish in the growing daylight. Crawford made his decision. Far as I can see, a sick girl got better. That's not a crime in my book. Sheriff, Pike's voice carried desperation. You can't simply ignore the methods used, the implications for the spiritual welfare of this community. The spiritual welfare of this community includes protecting innocent people. Miss Moon hasn't broken any laws I know of. Dutch stepped forward. Boss, sun's coming up. Maybe we should head back to the house. Blackwood nodded. He'd made his own decision during the long night. Watching Serena sacrifice herself for his daughter had clarified everything. Serena, you have a place at my ranch for as long as you want it. Mr. Blackwood, I'm grateful, but folks won't understand. Then they'll learn to understand. Pike stepped forward. Cornelius, think about what you're doing. The social implications. The questions people will ask. Let them ask. My daughter is alive. That's the only answer that matters. Isabella took Serena's hand. She's my sister now, in every way that counts. The simple declaration carried weight beyond its words. Pike's followers began to disperse. Some still muttered disapproval. Others showed the uncertainty of people whose worldview had shifted overnight. But none of them challenged Blackwood's decision directly. The evidence of Isabella's recovery was too powerful to argue against. 6 months later, the Blackwood Ranch had become something new. Word had spread about the healing that took place. There, people came from across the territory seeking help for ailments that conventional medicine couldn't touch. Serena and Isabella worked together. Their shared experience had created a bond deeper than blood. They combined Serena's traditional knowledge with Isabella's educated understanding of anatomy and medicine. The mine remained closed. Blackwood had made good on his promise to the spirits. The burial ground was marked with respectful stones and protected by legal deed. The Lakota tribe had accepted the returned artifacts with solemn ceremony. The financial loss had been significant, but the ranch's new role as a healing center brought different kinds of wealth. Respect from people who'd previously been suspicious. Gratitude from families whose loved ones had been helped. Dutch had adapted to the changes with characteristic loyalty. He managed the ranch operations while maintaining careful security. Some people still viewed Serena with suspicion, but Dutch's presence discouraged open hostility. Pike had left the territory entirely. His absolute certainties had crumbled in the face of undeniable miracle. Some said he'd gone east to a city where his kind of rigid thinking was more welcome. Others claimed he'd simply lost his faith entirely. Crawford had been re-elected sheriff partly based on his handling of the burial ground incident. The territory had grown more diverse under his watch, more tolerant of differences, more willing to judge people by their actions rather than their appearance. On this particular morning, Blackwood watched his daughters work with a young Lakota boy who'd been brought to them with a fever that wouldn't break. Serena prepared traditional remedies while Isabella monitored the child's vital signs with scientific precision. Their combined approach had proven more effective than either method alone, science and tradition working together. Different kinds of knowledge creating something stronger than either could achieve separately. The boy's fever broke as the sun reached its peak. His parents wept with gratitude. They offered payment in the form of handcrafted items and promises of future service. Blackwood accepted their thanks but refused payment. The ranch's healing work was supported by those who could afford to give. Those who couldn't were treated freely. It was a system that worked, a balance between practical needs and moral obligations. As the family prepared to leave with their recovered son, Blackwood reflected on the night that had changed everything. The desperate gamble that had saved his daughter and transformed his understanding of what family meant. Serena approached him as he stood watching the departing wagon. "Penny for your thoughts, Papa." The words still surprised him. Still filled him with warmth he'd never expected. Serena had started calling him Papa 2 months after the ceremony. Isabella had suggested it. He'd accepted it with gratitude. Thinking about that night at the burial ground, how desperate I felt, how hopeless everything seemed. And now? Now I understand that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. Isabella joined them on the porch. Her health had returned completely. Her strength had grown beyond what it had been before her illness. The spiritual experience had changed her in ways that were still revealing themselves. Another successful healing, she said. That's the 14th this month. People are traveling further to reach us, Serena added. Word is spreading across the territories. Blackwood nodded. Their reputation had grown steadily. The initial suspicion had given way to respect as undeniable results accumulated. Are you happy? He asked. Both of you? Isabella and Serena exchanged the kind of look that passed between sisters. Understanding that needed no words. We're home, Isabella said simply. We're family, Serena added. Blackwood pulled girls close. The evening sun painted the burial ground in the distance with golden light. The sacred space was peaceful now, protected, honored. In the distance, another wagon approached. More people seeking healing, more opportunities to help, more chances to prove that love was stronger than fear. The beggar girl who'd stunned him with an impossible promise had given him more than his daughter's life. She'd given him a new understanding of what wealth really meant, and that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.